Hello and welcome to another episode of Homeschooling 101 on Jewish Charlotte Mason. My name is Bethany Mandel and I am here today to talk to you a little bit about curriculum. Where to start? So this is always the first question that I get. What curriculum should I use? As if it comes in a magical box that comes to your doorstep and there's a whole instructional pamphlet ready to go that tells you how to homeschool. And I sort of wish it were that easy, but it's not. There's a couple steps that you need to take before you take the plunge to decide what curriculum, if any, and that's a key word, if any, you're planning on using. Most Jewish homeschoolers that I know call themselves eclectic homeschoolers, which means they use sort of a hodgepodge of things, depending on their kids' needs and their family's needs, and what sort of suits their lifestyles. So I wanted to go over some different curriculum options that are both all-in-one, which is on the easier side, and then also some individual curriculums based on math and writing, and different sort of secular things that you might not be aware of. So to start, I wanted to talk a little bit about my friend Jessie. She is a homeschool mom. She's Christian. She lives in Las Vegas in Nevada, and she had a fantastic Instagram post that I wanted to put up here. And she explains sort of the steps that she encourages parents take before they choose a curriculum, because really it's the third step. So the first step that she talks about is she encourages families to figure out why they're planning on homeschooling. And that's a tough question for families this year, because most people are going to say, because of COVID, because my kid's school is closed, because I don't want them to do distance learning, or I don't want them to be socially distancing in school, or I don't want them to be wearing a mask, or I'm worried about their safety in school, or the safety of people in our household, any number of reasons. But beyond that, I sort of want you to still try to step back a little bit and think about what you want your ideal homeschool to look like. Do you want your kids to be more self-directed? Do you want it to be a family endeavor? Do you want your kids to be sort of sitting around with a book in their hands and it's a very book-based life? Or do you want them to be really academically driven and have workbooks and be sort of tiger mom a little bit, taking the opportunity to have your kids really sort of advance academically? So I want you to think about for a minute, and if you want to pause this video and think about your family mission statement. What are you planning on doing with your homeschool this year? And then after you sort of think about that a little bit and maybe look at your kids' school to look at their mission statements or different schools, the second step that I want you to do is think about your philosophy and your family's learning styles. Most families that have been homeschooling for a long time don't necessarily follow a particular philosophy. There's a lot of them out there. But even if you're not planning on strictly following a philosophy, Charlotte Mason is one of them. That's why this is called Jewish Charlotte Mason, because that's what we follow. I think it's advantageous for you to look up what is out there, what different philosophies do people have in their homeschools, because even if you're not going to strictly follow a philosophy, it's really helpful to sort of have an idea in your brain about where you want to go and what you want to do. And if you just Google homeschool philosophy, there's a lot of quizzes out there that you can take that can tell you I'm an unschooler, or I'm eclectic, or I'm Charlotte Mason. There's any number of options as far as philosophy goes. And the nice thing about nailing down a philosophy is it's really nailing down the kind of homeschool that you want to have, and it likely has a name, and you just have to figure out what that name is. And once you have that name, the third step is to look into curriculum options for the philosophy that you're planning on following. So for example, we are Charlotte Mason homeschoolers, and so that's the curriculum options that I'm the most comfortable with. Charlotte Mason is very literature-based, it's very nature-based. There's a heavy emphasis on classic literature and books and art. So when we were looking for curriculum options, obviously we wanted to have a curriculum that was not overtly Christian. So we looked into a couple different options, and there's Ambleside Online, which is it is a Christian option. It is free, and the website is vast, and to me, I think a little bit overwhelming. There's what we used last year called Charlotte Mason Institute. That's the name of the organization, and they have a curriculum called the Alviary. The Alviary is another great option. They label on their website when things are secular or not. We were not in love with some of the book selections, and there was just a lot there, and it was overwhelming, especially when we had to add in the Jewish subjects. So next year we decided to use another curriculum called A Gentle Feast, which is also Christian, but she sort of easily labels when it is, so it can be subbed out. In a later sort of episode that's not associated with this sort of Jewish Homeschool 101, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we've altered A Gentle Feast in order to make it work for our Jewish family. So those are some of the main Charlotte Mason options. There's Simply Charlotte Mason. There's a Delectable Education, which is a podcast I mentioned in a previous episode. They do consulting. And so I wanted to also mention the only Jewish homeschool curriculum that has yet to be sort of created is called Ani Va'ami. It is a Charlotte Mason curriculum, and it's not a complete curriculum like some of these other ones are, where it lays out for you week by week by week. This is what you do. This is what you read. These are the books. However, they have a relationship with a business called Charlotte Mason Plenary, and the curriculum and the Charlotte Mason Plenary work together, and so the Plenary can help you plan how to use the Ani Va'ami curriculum together, so that you can sort of make your own curriculum that works for you, that's Jewish. It's a really good option to use their consulting services at the Plenary if you are just not sure how to start and you need a little bit of hand-holding. I definitely recommend it. I'm friendly with the women who started Ani Va'ami, and I'm friendly with the women who own the Plenary. It's fantastic. So if you're looking for that option, that's definitely out there. So I wanted to list a few other sort of all-in-one curriculums, because what I just mentioned were also all-in-one curriculums. Another one that a lot of people seem to like is called Easy Peasy. All-in-one curriculum. It is a little bit Christian, but again, like a lot of the components that are Christian are easily labeled. Another one is called Build Your Library. It's sort of Charlotte Mason-y. They basically send you a box of books, and it's really laid out. It's on the expensive side, but also because they're sending you all the books. The curriculums that we've used in the past, and what I mentioned earlier, Ambleside and Alviary and A Gentle Feast, they don't send you the books, which is, in my mind, actually a plus, because you can buy them used and get a significant markdown that way. When you use Build Your Library, they send you a box of brand new books, so there's a markup there. But that's another great option. They're a relative of a Christian curriculum called Sunlight, which is really popular, but it's not. They don't have the sort of focus on the fine literature and art that I would necessarily want. And it's also really, really expensive, but it's all laid out for you. So another few options is Calvert Online. That is led by a teacher, and it's for grades 3 through 12. It's more hands-off. So this was another sort of one of the things where I was talking about, where you kind of need to think about what you want your homeschool to look like. If you need it to be super student-led and not parent-intensive, if you have a job to do, this is one of those options that might actually work for you, because it's online and it's led by a teacher on the other end, which is nice. There's another one called Edmentum, or Ed Options Academy. This is all online, but again, going back to what you think you might need in a homeschool, it's accredited. And so a lot of people, when they think about sort of the legalities of homeschool, they think that it needs to be accredited in order for their kids to go back to school next year, or to be legally homeschooling. Legal homeschool is a topic that I covered in a previous episode, and you don't need need any sort of accreditation in your state to be a homeschooler. But if you have sort of an older kid, or if you have an extenuating circumstances where you know that you need accreditation, that's one of the options. There's a website called Kathy Duffy, Duffy, and she sort of breaks down a lot of different curriculums. And so, I mean, it's impossible for me during this episode to sort of go through these curriculums, nor have I looked at all of them. So don't take this as gospel, but I would definitely go to the Kathy Duffy website, because she breaks down a lot of curriculum options and she reviews them, and this is what she does 24/7. So if you're looking for other curriculum options, I recommend those. One other curriculum option that is all-in-one that I've heard good things about is called Timberdoodle. They have modules, and so you can sort of have separate modules for reading or writing or I don't think math. But they have a Christian component. So just make sure if you're looking at their website that you're not looking at the Christian stuff. And that's generally a theme that is going to keep on coming up in my conversations with you guys about homeschooling, is be careful, because this is really Christian. Everything is really Christian. Which, I mean, I think it's great that people are sort of teaching their faith, but there's always little surprises that pop up when they're least expected. So another two options that I wanted to talk about a little bit are very similar websites. One is called outschool.com and one is called OpenTent. They're really similar. They're online sort of bunches of classes, or just individual classes that you can take in any range of subjects. They've become really popular during COVID because people are like, I need to put my kid in front of something. I don't know what though. But they have like really interesting, like teaching engineering with Legos. Both of the sites do. And they also have reading tutoring. My kids on OutSchool, that's the one that we use, OutSchool. They both took a Hebrew circle time class for like, I think it was over the course of 3 weeks, and it was 2 or 3 times a day. And by the end of their circle time class, they had learned in Hebrew their numbers and letters and weather phenomenon. It was a great class, and we actually liked the teacher so much that we started taking classes with her outside of OutSchool because she's a Hebrew tutor, and we were taking classes with her last year. I will be interviewing her during our Hebrew episode later this summer, so be sure to check that out because she's fantastic and we loved her a lot. So there's a couple of other sort of notable curriculums that I wanted to mention. For writing, there's a sort of expensive program called Brave Writer. She also has a book if you're sort of interested in learning more about homeschooling in general, and also sort of her philosophy teaching writing. I recommend it. I've heard really good things from parents over the years in homeschooling Facebook groups, which is something you should definitely join, because that is the way that you sort of get a window into what works for people, what doesn't work for people, in a way that you might not necessarily get that sort of insight from local parents, because there's not going to be many local parents that are homeschooling. One other curriculum that I wanted to talk about today that can be really overwhelming for parents is math. Math is not a subject that all of us are comfortable in, and I think in large part that's because we weren't taught it well. So there's a lot of possible curriculum options that you can use for math. There's no way that I can sort of review all of them here or give you personal sort of expertise based on any of them except for the one that we use personally, and I really like it, and I'll talk to you about it in a second. But before I sort of go into that, I wanted to point out 2 resources where you can find suggestions about not just math curriculums, but about curriculums in general. On the Ambleside website and also on the Ani Va'ami website, they've done an incredible job curating a lot of different curriculum options. They don't just talk about Charlotte Mason and the curriculum that they have, but they also list, like, here's the math options that we know work on both websites. And so I have here the list from the Ambleside website that list sort of the math options that they recommend. This is by no means the whole list. Math is one of those things that there are so many curriculums that it's impossible to keep up. So the first one on the list is called Right Start Math, and that's the curriculum that we use. It's very, again, as with everything else, you sort of have to think about what you need from math. Do you want, you have to think about the kind of kid that you have and how they learn. And one of the kind of frustrating but exciting things about homeschooling is that you might end up using 2 different curriculums depending on your kid's needs, which is frustrating because you have to buy and learn 2 different curriculums. But the cool thing is that would never happen in a classroom, and you're able to pinpoint exactly how your kid learns and exactly what they need, and then choose a curriculum that's based on those needs, which is something that's really valuable. One of the things I talked about earlier, the consultations with Charlotte Mason Plenary, one of the things that they can do, because they're experts in all of these different curriculums, is if you tell them about your kid, they can tell you what they think math curriculum will work for them. You know what I'm saying? If you ask in Facebook groups, people can give you their expertise. So if you say, my kid really needs manipulatives, or my kid is an auditory learner, there's any number of curriculums that might work best for them. So the curriculum that we use is called Right Start Math. This is the first grade level, it's B. It goes A through G, I think. And when you get in the upper grades, they have online classes also. So be sure to check that out if you have early middle schoolers. So on every lesson, which takes about a day, and it takes about 15 or 20 minutes in our experience, they list here the name of the lesson, and they list the objectives, what you're hoping to do. One of the cool things that I learned about Right Start was that it felt like we weren't doing much every day, but by the end of the year, I was blown away at how much she had learned in 1 year. So it lists the materials that you need, and then it lists the activities that you're doing that day. It's a very manipulative-based curriculum, and it's a very game-based curriculum, which is fun. So they send you workbooks, and they send you a massive and pretty expensive manipulative kit. My number one suggestion with manipulatives of any kind is to take really good care of them, because even though it is a large sort of upfront investment, if you take good care of them, the resale value is really there. And you might also have luck buying things on resale sort of Facebook groups if money is a little bit tight. So there's a lot of other math options. One thing I recommend if you're thinking about sending your kids back to school next year is to talk to your kids' teachers and see what curriculum they use, because it might make sense for you to choose that curriculum if you're only keeping them home for the year. A lot of schools use a curriculum called Singapore Math. It's one that I've heard great things about. There's other curriculums called Life of Fred or Math UC. Those are 2 really common and popular curriculums. There's any number of options. There's also online options that are vast. It's really like the possibilities are endless. So if you go on the Ambleside websites or the Ani Va'ami websites, they will list any number of curriculums. And I will also say there's really helpful Jewish Facebook groups. There's a couple of them. There's Orthodox Jewish homeschoolers. There's Jewish homeschoolers with a little heart emoji on Facebook, and then there's also the one that I admin called Jewish Charlotte Mason. It's in the YouTube comments here on my page, and there's also a Facebook group for Ani Va'ami. So there's a lot of options to talk to people about what curriculums work for them. I plan to sort of break down a little bit in a later episode how to make a curriculum work for you if it's Christian, because in my opinion, the Christian homeschoolers have wonderful intentions, and I think that they have the same intentions that we do to raise our children in a morally upright way. And they've been around longer because this is a really popular option in Christian communities. So they have the expertise to develop curriculums in a way that we haven't caught up yet, but we are catching up and we need to catch up. And this is sort of one of those ways where I'm hoping that we can catch up. There's those Facebook groups. There's also Yahoo groups. There's Google groups. There's a growing community of Jewish homeschoolers, and I hope that you'll sort of join and share your thoughts and your expertise. If you are interested in watching more of these videos, please click subscribe, and you will get more updates about this Jewish 101 Homeschooling 101 series. And please comment, not crazy things. Please comment and click like. And I look forward to talking to you in a future episode about more about homeschooling. Thank you so much.